Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AmandaFest podcast, where our mission is simple. It's to inspire and empower our listeners to take aligned action towards their dream lives, whatever that looks like for you. I'm so excited to introduce my friend John here today. He was born and raised by a single teenage mother in Buffalo, New York, and is currently living in New York City selling real estate with Ryan Serhant from Netflix's Owning Manhattan and Bravo's $1 Million Listing. I met John in New York City through some mutual friends a couple months ago, and he has one of the craziest manifestation stories I think I've ever heard in my life. So obviously, I had to invite him onto the podcast to talk about it. We're going to be talking all things manifestation and mindset. But as we've done with every episode, before we do that, I just like to take a quick moment for us all to ground down, get present in our bodies, and just arrive in the here and now so that we can soak up all the magic and medicine of this juicy conversation. So, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if it's safe to do so, I invite you to close your eyes. I like to put a hand on my heart and one on my belly. And just slow down for a second. Notice your body. Notice your jaw. Notice your shoulders. Notice if you're holding tension in any parts of your body, and use this as an opportunity to release it and let it go. So I'm going to take a couple quick breaths to ground. And as we take a nice deep breath in, I want you to think of something that you're calling in for this next hour, this moment. And with every exhale, I want you to think of something you're ready to let go of. So we'll do a couple cleansing breaths together. Nice deep breath in. Hold it at the top and exhale out. One more nice deep breath in. Hold it at the top and out. And on this next breath in and out, I want you to make some noise on the exhale if that feels good. So nice deep breath in. And on the exhale, feel free to make some noise, shake it out. Welcome. Welcome to AmandaFest. Welcome to your bodies. And welcome, John.
Hey, how are you?
So happy to have you. Thanks for being here
Of
today.
course. I wish I would have got a haircut. I look a little scraggly, but whatever, it's good.
Where are you tuning in from?
I'm in New York right now. I'm at the office in Soho.
So we met right before, I think we were going to Fisher. This was when Julia and I were going to Fisher.
Yeah.
And you stopped by the bar and you started talking about your story. And it was like, we didn't have enough time. I just remember we were at the bar. We ran to a corner store to get something. You weren't coming to the show with us, and you were telling me all about your manifestation story. And I was just like, I need to know more. I need to know more. So I would love if you feel comfortable sharing at least a part of what that story was that hooked me in. And then I'd love to dive in from there.
Yeah, I was just coming from work and I had a couple other things to do. And I really wanted to go to Fisher because we just went to John's Summit at Navy Yard and
So good.
had the time of my life. And so I was just like, damn, because I like Fisher more than I like Summit, which is kind of crazy. And so I really wanted to go. And then, of course,
controversial take.
Yeah, no, I think it's because I've known Fisher longer, which is like I just got put on the Summit, which we were talking about it before we got on. Not a lot of people know about Summit, which is crazy to us.
Yes. So he just released his first album. If you're in the EDM scene, if you're in that space, you'll definitely know who he is. I think what he's doing right now is really smart, though, because he's incorporating social media. I think he's doing like YouTube behind the scenes stuff. I haven't watched them, but I know that he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if he takes that kind of influencer route, that's going to help him but neither here nor there. We're not here to talk about John Summit.
No, of course. So from my recollection, we started talking about real estate. Obviously, the show, I believe, was the show's either out or it was coming out. Julia mentioned it, like how Julia doesn't like people being like, oh, she was in the Olympics. I'm always like, yo, chill. But she's like, it's New York. You sell here. People need to know about you. Julia was telling you guys about me, telling you about working here at Serhant, stuff like that. We got on the topic of manifestation. I don't know how. And then we were just talking about how I ended up here. And I think when you guys were paying the bill, you were like, time out, I need to hear more about this. This is what my podcast is about. This is the type of things I love to hear. And then we talked for a good, I'd probably say like 10, 15 minutes before. And it was just like an instant connection. And we're like, we have to find time to connect, get to know one another, maybe grab a drink or two, and then hopefully one day do the podcast. And here we are. The night that we went out was definitely, as like Julia and other people say, like a New York night where it's like, hey, we're going to grab one drink. And next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and we're wandering the streets. Like, how did we get to the Upper West Side when we were all the way downtown?
So amazing. Well, yeah, I'd love for you to share. I know that there are certain versions of the story that are a little confidential. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing publicly, I would love to give our listeners a little sneak peek into that wild story.
Yeah. So I pretty much, from playing sports, we were always taught the power of the mind and visualizing. And from playing sports in college, there is a level to it where, from my opinion at least, some people would agree, some not agree, but the starter that's, let's say, a first team All-American to the kid that never touches the field, it's not that there's a night and day difference. There is and there isn't, but a lot of it too is reaction, seeing things before they happen, knowing what to do, knowing how to do it. There's a lot more coming out with sports, you know, how they have Hard Knocks for the NFL, they have all these different things, and you're hearing a lot more podcasts with athletes talking about how they think the game and how they're able to know what certain defenses or certain players are doing prior to, and then how coaches, they disguise defenses, all these different things, right? So we were taught that. And I think that for me, I just always had these visions, not like That's So Raven where I would like freeze and be like this, but but when I was in school, I was like, this isn't for me. Like, what do you mean that after this you go work a 9 to 5? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the idea of just like checking boxes and going to the next thing as a kid really, really freaked me out. So I became very observant and was always very curious. And it was interesting because my mom had me so young, she never was like, you need to do this, you need to do that. She was always like, look, you could be successful however way you want, but there is like guidelines to certain things. Then I had a teacher, we talked about this, Mr. Athemus, who was a high school teacher. He actually, my senior year of high school, gave us the book, The Alchemist. And he told us that if we read it, internalized it, it would change our life forever. I was in college, was going through a rough time, cleaning my room. I don't know where the book came from, but the book, I think, like fell off a closet shelf. I didn't even know I had it there. Hit me, and I was like, oh, I forgot Mr. Athemus gave us this book. I'm like, what's it all about? So I went down a rabbit hole of The Alchemist, and I came across a lot of people like Kobe Bryant, the rapper Nipsey Hussle, and a lot of other people like the rapper Russ, Kyrie Irving, who's a basketball player. A lot of these people contribute a lot of their success to that book. They are saying that it's similar to the Four Agreements, Think and Grow Rich, like all these different books. And I don't know why, but I was like, okay, if all these people are saying these things about it, and my high school teacher, I remember being 18 years old, him being like, if you internalize this, it'll forever change your life. And I was just like, okay, let me read it. And when I read it, I don't know how to explain. Everyone has their thing where you read something and you feel like it's talking to you and you feel it within you, where you're like, okay, I was meant to read this, discover this, or find this at a specific time in my life. And so I became hooked with the book. And I don't want to ruin the book for everyone, but essentially it talks about how everyone has a personal legend, which is when there is something inside you, some people would say it's a voice, where you know exactly what you want to do and you feel as though you know what you're meant to do, not similar to what your purpose is, but what you're meant to do. And there was just a part of me that was like, I don't want to have to work for anyone. I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I want to be able to be almost like how you're living the nomad life. Why can't I just pick up and go? Why can't I travel all the time? Why do I got to work in the structure of society of 2 vacations a year, 40 hours a week, all these things? And I was just like, this makes no sense to me because there's people that I know that golf all day and make millions of dollars. And it's like, how are you doing that? If you're doing it legally, let's say. So I dove deep into it. That same summer, I got into real estate just because the school I was at, they're very big on pitching internships. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an attorney. My mom's a real estate paralegal. So I did that for a summer. And funny enough, the team lead, that's my boss here in New York, his brother is who the attorney was that I worked with that summer as an intern. His name's Mike. My boss here, his name's Andrew, but they're brothers. So that summer when I worked with them, I hated it. I wanted nothing to do with it. I'm like, damn, I thought I wanted to be an attorney, but I was thinking money. I wasn't thinking anything else. I was
Right.
just thinking, how do I get rich? That's all I was thinking about. Because in my mind, I was like, if I have the money, I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I wasn't looking at it from a materialistic aspect, nothing. I could care less about all that. And so from there, he was like, you should get your real estate license. You're good with people. I'm like, it's like some car salesman stuff. I don't know about that. So I was telling my mom about it, and she was like, I think you'd be good. You should do it. So I'm like, okay, sure. Maybe I'll learn business that way, learn how to be an entrepreneur, whatever that means. That same summer, my mom's sitting on the couch watching this show called Million Dollar Listing, but it was the Miami edition, which I think they only had 1 or 2 seasons on for Bravo. And I saw how much they were making in commission. I was like, there's no way they make that much money selling these penthouses in Miami. That's just not true. And she broke it down for me. And again, from the idea of like, I want to be rich and I'm going to be rich. I just don't
Right.
know how.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
there's no way that's real. And then she broke it down living in Buffalo, what the commission was there. And I was always like, well, why would anyone want to sell a $200,000 house versus $2 million house? No disrespect. So then the idea that that's obviously there's a lot of work that goes into the business and there's a lot of work that we do, but that was like where it initially kicked off. And so then I saw $1 million listing New York, I saw $1 million listing Miami, and then LA. And then being a sports person, I was always like, I want to be around the best people and I want to be pushed.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I thought that if you were on TV, you are the best. And then from watching the show, I was like, okay, Josh Altman in Los Angeles and Ryan Serhant in New York are the people that I like the best. I don't know if I would like LA, and I also don't want to live on the West Coast when my entire family's on the East Coast and all my friends are here and
Right.
everything.
Right. Right.
And so I was like, okay, I've been in New York tons of times as a kid. Every time I visit, I love it. And I've always said that if I could live in New York and had the right job, it was either like the right job that allowed me to live how I wanted to or an opportunity I'd be stupid to turn down, I would move there in a heartbeat. So this was all probably, I would say 2015, 2016.
Right.
So then I immediately went down a rabbit hole, just trying to figure out a way I can get in touch with Ryan, Josh, all these people. And because I'm like, even if I get to New York or LA, whoever it is, even though I wanted it to be New York, I'm like, I at least can learn from them and have them in my network. And the whole idea of networking was new to me as well, where it's like, wait, you could just go meet people, talk to people, and your whole life can change just like that. So it's not what you know, it's who you know. But if you know the right people and you have either the resume or the knowledge, then it's like you're going to the moon. So being
Yeah.
younger and holding that vision, holding that idea of this is what I'm going to do, and I can't explain why, that's just what I ran with. So I initially sent emails to all these different companies, all these different people, all the people that I could find in luxury just to learn. Even if it wasn't for either Ryan or Josh, right? I was just like, as long as I can get there and sell $1 million houses, that's what I really want to do. So everyone told me, wait till you're 30, travel, do all these things because you're going to need a network. There's a guy, his name was Kevin Wilson, and he said to me, he was like, look, if I gave you a $5 million listing right now, who can you call in your database to sell it? And I was like, I don't know a single person that can afford $500,000, let alone 5 million. And so he was like,
Yeah.
okay, so go travel, go do your thing. Like, that's what you should do. You should work for people for free. And I was like, well, who would ever want to work for someone for free? And then when I started going down a rabbit hole of just what content creators were saying that are, let's say, entrepreneurs like Gary Vee, Ryan, all these other people, they religiously was like, work for free, because then that's how you can get the closest to these people. You can really learn. And then if you do good work, they might offer you a job. And so where it kind of worked out for me is I brought this to my mom, and my mom's like, well, you don't have any student loans. You got school paid for. So why not? All of your friends are going to be in, grad school. They're going to be getting their masters, their PhDs. By the time that they really start to make good money, they're going to be just turning 30 or in their early 30s. Some not, but that was just the general timeline. And because I still had that travel bug in me and I still wanted to like continue college, let's say, I mean, I didn't want to grow up right away. So I was like, okay, well, let's be strategic about this. Let me go live in different places. I'll be upfront with all these people, tell them that I'm only going to be here for about a year, maybe 2 years. I'll work for free. I'll do whatever they want. I just want to learn, pick their brains. A lot of people told me no. Other people were like, sure. And I would say, like, the
Why not?
second I'm not doing something right, you can get rid of me, fire me, bye. And so that's what I did. And this was all just one giant risk. And at the end of the day, I was of the mindset like, all right, well, it'll make a good story one day. I might be an idiot, but it'll make a good story. As long as my mom's fine with it and my family's cool with it. Because my mom's biggest thing was always like, look, if you could pay your bills, you have enough money to enjoy yourself and you're happy, and you could set a little aside for a rainy day, who cares? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then we'll fast forward to last year. A buddy of mine, he works for the FBI, but he's always traveling and doing crazy things. And when we were home for Christmas, he was like, how come you never come to New York? I've been in New York for 2 years now. You travel and see all these other people. I was like, look, okay, well, when can I come to New York? He's like, the only availability I have is for New Year's. He's like, but I have a wedding in Buffalo the 31st. I'm driving back on the 1st. I said, okay, I'll drive back with you on the 1st. I'm like, we don't need to do anything special. I've been in New York tons of times. So I drove back with him. And then I remember it vividly, January 3rd, he had to work. So I was like, oh, okay, well, let me go walk around Soho. I know that's where the office is because Ryan started his company during the pandemic and I saw it on Million Dollar Listing. That's when he first announced it. And so I was like, let me just go see the office, see where it is. And I remember walking by the office and I was just like, damn, it would be so cool to work here. Like just live in New York, work at Serhant, just to be around not just him, but also the different agents that are here and the networking and all the things. And at the time when I was here, I was a week away from being 29 years old. So at the time, I'm only 28. Now I'm 30 because I've been here
Okay.
for a year. And we went to dinner that night. And again, the whole spiel about, oh, you should move to New York. You would love New York. And I was like, well, I would only move here if I could work at Serhant. And my buddy, not knowing anything, he was like, what would that, well, I don't even know what that means. I'm like, that would be like if I'm playing JUCO football. And I said, I'm only going to go play football if I can go play for Nick Saban at Alabama. And he damn near spit his drink out. And he was like, okay, so you're not moving to New York. So we'll get that off the table. Because I had a business at the time in Buffalo. And I was in between like, do I expand or do I go down south to Florida? Because I didn't want to stay in Buffalo, but a lot of my friends are down in Florida. And then I remember coming back, I told him, I said, look, I'm going to shoot my shot with as many people as I can. A lot of people at the time at the company were just like, they told me no, but they told me no because I don't have a network here. So then
Right.
I was out to lunch. This is where it gets crazy. So Mike, the attorney that I mentioned, I came back, was out to lunch with him. He was asking me, he's like, oh, how was Manhattan? I was like, I love it. And he was saying how he wanted to move there right after law school, but he didn't. And then he was like, my brother's there. My brother's a broker. He actually works at Serhant. And I was just like, I was like, would you be able to put me in touch? And he was like, you'd move to New York? I was like, I will move to New York the second we finish up paying this. He's like, well, okay, well, if you're serious, he's like, I think my brother would really like you. And he put me in touch with his brother. And when I talked to his brother, who's my boss here now, it pretty much was just like, why do you want to do this? It's very fast paced. It's a lot. We're ultimately a representation of Ryan, but you're ultimately a representation of me as well. In the moment, I was like, I need to shoot my shot and not tiptoe around this. And so I don't even remember what I said to him. But then he invited me out to New York the following week. And I came out here. I remember calling my buddy, telling him, hey, I'm coming back next week. And he was like, there's no way this is happening. He's like, that quickly. So I remember came back and yeah, then the rest is history. But it's just funny though, because when I was in college, being a little arrogant, obviously, trying to speak it into existence from what these books were saying, I told everybody in college, and I even put it out there at graduation, that I was either going to be going to LA to work for Josh Altman, or I was going to be going to New York to work for Ryan Serhant. Mind you, I didn't know anyone in New York or LA at the time, and this was 2017, and now it's 2023. Yeah, like a week after visiting New York, and I've been here for a year now.
That's my favorite part of the story.
Yeah, there's a lot more details.
That
There's a lot more details, but there's certain details that are like, we're going to keep in-house.
there are certain details that we're going to keep private, given the fact that this is your current place of employment. So we're gonna
and
be respectful.
No one I work with knows this story.
It's amazing though. So much of what you shared, I resonate with so much. I don't think I told you a lot about my entertainment path,
No.
which was the majority of my life. Yeah. So I did a really similar thing to you in the sense that I always had the mentality that I wanted to be around the best. If I was going to be working in theater, I wanted to be working with Broadway actors at the top. I worked at Telsey and Company, which is the best casting office in New York. They cast for Wicked, Hamilton, all those places. I was like, if I go to LA, I want to be working at the top agency. I want to be working with the top actors. That was always like, it was inevitable. And that was the mindset that I had about it. And so I feel like when you approach things from this is inevitable, that is how you make it happen. I think if you had the mindset like your friend did, who almost spit out his drink when you said, "Oh, I'm going to be working at this place," he's like, "Yeah, but that's impossible." And it's like, "Yeah, for you, if you think it's impossible, but for me, it's happening."
Exactly. I might sound really out there to a lot of people that are listening to this, but when it really hit me was during COVID, when you're stuck in the house. I was just binge watching Netflix, and Conor McGregor had a documentary about how he became obviously Conor McGregor now, and he was always preaching the law of attraction and the secret and all these things. And then there was a documentary on Travis Scott where it was like the same thing. And the trailer of the Travis Scott documentary is him, and it looks like maybe at a fairground, and there's like 5 people in the crowd, and then it zooms out and it's him and his buddies watching the original, like on their phone like this, watching that and being like, yo, how crazy is it? And then it cuts to him selling out arenas, like the craziest things. And then I don't know why I went down the craziest rabbit hole and found all of these people like Oprah, Drake, from all walks of life talking about how the power of the mind and how they're going to do it, but in very tactical ways, not in like a
Right,
let me just
right.
be here for social media, but very tactical, and how they would script and how they would write all these things. And how would you feel if you read this and it was actually true? And then I thought about how there's certain things that I read and I had illusions of that once I got in those rooms, I'm like, oh, this isn't that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it's almost like to a degree you become desensitized to things. And I think that's the hardest part, because now that the show's out on Netflix, tons of friends, family, everything have reached out to me, DM me. I'm not even in the show, but have been like, what's it like working there? How cool is it? Do you know this person, that person, this person? I'm like, yeah, I do. But the disconnect is that I see them every day. I talk to them when I see them, and I'm like, oh, I don't view them, not because it's not a respect thing. I look up to all of them because I eventually want to be on that level one day, selling 10, 15, $20 million apartments, especially Andrew, my team lead right now, who's someone I look up to. But it's like, I look at it as it's a personal relationship. So it's like, I know you, I'm not looking at you from the aspect of like,
Yeah, you're not pedestalizing them
yes,
as like celebrities.
yes, like the biggest is if you can wrap your mind around that, but also in a way, if you just imagine you're in those rooms and you're mingling with these people and you're in those conversations, it to a degree becomes reality within your body.
100%. I'll say as well, my experience working at a talent agency, that was another thing too that I noticed. I mean, I was young at the time, I was in my early 20s. But with the actors, if someone's extremely talented, I really respect them, but I don't look at celebrities or actors and think that they're anything other than human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, that helped me progress in my career a lot faster than a lot of people.
When you put yourself in that mindset, it allows you to open more doors for yourself. Then you can walk in those rooms being like, oh, I belong.
100%.
I'm not a fan or all that.
100%. 100%. It's like we could potentially collaborate. I am a value add to this situation
Mm-hmm.
here. And I know that I am. And I'm just going to act as such. And when you act that way, you're perceived that way.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear a little bit about your process. I say with my podcast, it's a combination of spirituality and practicality.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to bring you on specifically. You are very, very, very different from pretty much any guest I've had so far, because most of my friends are super hippy dippy, woo woo, into the spirituality
Yeah.
stuff. And I am too, and that's fine and that's great. But my purpose here on this podcast and in life is to bridge the gap between spirituality and practicality,
Uh-huh.
right? And I think you have a little bit more woo than you think you do. But I think you're of the mindset of this practicality of utilizing these really science backed mindset games and manipulations and utilizing them to your advantage to build the empire that you're building and to create the dream reality. Like, you quite literally went from a place of stating to the universe what you desire to just a few years later creating that reality for yourself, and you're in the midst of a dream that you had a few years ago. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what your process beyond just that initial stating is.
I probably drive a lot of people crazy because for me, it's the long, hard road where it's like, yo, to get to the other side of the street, just walk straight across the street. You don't need to go left, go around the block, come back up, and then be like, oh, I'm here. Like, you just wasted all that time. But for me, I need to observe things in a slow way so I can truly understand them. But I also want to know the different lenses that are along the way and the different ways that you can go about things. So, in the way of how my mind works, it's more so like, okay, what are all the different ways that this can go? And how do I baby step my way into that and then break it down?
I love right now we're like sharing these inspirational videos on Instagram back and forth to each other, but there's this one that continues to stick out to me that I think is so pivotal to what you are trying to do. It's like you have to be a little bit delusional in order to have big dreams, goals, and aspirations. It's the only way, because it's delusional to other people until it's reality. And then once it's reality, people are like, oh my God, wow, that's crazy. But you're just like, no, I always knew this was going to happen.
I think the biggest thing is that we, not just as humans, but like technology and everything, we move so fast on a day to day that we never take time to digest things. It's just on to the next, on to the next. And then we constantly are seeing finished products. We never
Right.
see the behind the scenes or the, oh, can you cut this part out of the podcast? Not really, but I'm just saying like that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are like, oh my gosh, Amanda has this podcast. It's flawless. I could never do that. But they never see the behind the scenes or how many takes it got to get there.
Or how many likes and ums and you knows, or when I say
Exactly.
like delete, delete,
Exactly.
delete.
So there's a video from 50 Cent the rapper. He was saying that he had to like brainwash himself to know that he was going to make it, and that a lot of people took it as delusion, and a lot of
Ooh.
people took it as delusion and arrogance and cockiness. And if you watch, I don't even know if it's on Netflix anymore, but there's one with Kanye West too, where he was just like, I have big dreams, I'm gonna be a star one day, and he was saying all these things, and then they show him walking into the Rockefeller office being like, listen to this song, this song's gonna be a hit. And then it's, of course, like some of his most famous songs, like the College Dropout album. And then
Yeah.
now you're starting to see it. There's an Instagram page called Plot Twist, and it's Drake Spinsta. And it's from all of the albums he's ever made, and from like the time he started to now, all these behind the scenes shots and everything that you can like almost incorporate as like a documentary. And for me, I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if other people see it this way. I look at it like, okay, you had an idea for this podcast. You thought of something. You're obviously passionate about this. You're passionate about the ideas. You're passionate about being this thing. And you're like, how do I baby step it and just keep going and keep pushing the envelope?
Yeah.
And then most of the time when you talk to these people, they either are like, I was in such a bad situation that being delusional was the only thing that gave me hope. Or they're like, I would rather fail and be laughed at than to stay, you know, working in this situation or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, referring to that rabbit hole I went down, the rapper Nipsey Hussle, he had a thing where he talked about how we all know who we are, but then we go out in the world and we're influenced, whether it
Yeah.
is by our parents, our friends, society, all these different things. And that if you just stay 10 toes down on who you are, you're going to eventually over time attract your tribe. And I think that,
Totally.
uh,
I love that one.
yeah. And I think that personally, we go through so many like harsh relationships, whether it's with friends, families, work, everything, because again, we are humans, so it's hard to just be yourself at all times because you know innately being yourself doesn't always get you to where you want to be. So it's like you kind of got to play the game too. And I think sometimes we get lost in that game versus being like, if this doesn't
Well,
work out,
you have to know that you're playing the game. This is where I think a lot of spiritual people get stuck, because once you recognize and realize that we are literally, quite literally, this entire human experience is it's a game.
yes,
Like, it's all a silly little game. and nothing matters and everything matters.
Yes.
And I think that the people that lose the game, in my opinion, are the ones that have no idea it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people that win the game are fucking playing it. And the people that get stuck are the ones that know that it's a game, see that it's a game, and reject the game. But I think the sweet spot is what we're talking about. It's like you see it, you recognize it, you're like, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm fucking playing Monopoly. Guess what? I got the rule book right here and I know exactly what to do. You don't even know the rules of the game and you're trying to play it. Like, you don't even know you're in a game.
Exactly. And I think too, I would argue this, but that's just really the only thing I've ever known, is I think that sports is the greatest metaphor for life. Because if you lose a game, it's not the end of the world. It's like, okay, how did we lose? Why did we lose? What did I not do right? How do we get better? We're on to next week. And then the reps of sports, as long as you have the consistency with it, with the reps, and obviously I'm not going to sit here and sound like some motivational person because I fuck up all the time. I'm lazy all the time. I'm inconsistent all the time. I'm human. But I think that it allows you to understand that we waste so much time being worried about things that don't, in the grand scheme of things, matter. And I think
Right.
for me personally, kind of going back to the initial question, I think growing up without a father and being raised by a single teenage mother and going through all of that as a kid and seeing all the things my mom had to go through, I think it really sobers you up, because I feel as though I lived my life in reverse, where the most messed up and traumatic things happened from like the time I was born to whereas now I'm like, oh, whatever, I'm ready for whatever. And then like nowadays, at least friends of mine, they had a really great child. I'm not saying I didn't have a good childhood. I had the best childhood. It was amazing. But those, let's say, traumatic things, it was in reverse. Whereas like a lot of my friends, they didn't really experience quote unquote trauma or bad things until they were like entering their 20s or mid 20s. And now they're still scarred from it. Whereas with me, I'm like, yeah, this sucks. But at the end of the day, the show must go on. Not avoiding things, but like,
you could have two people that were raised in the same circumstances and go opposite directions, right? You could have
yeah.
people that are affected by traumatic experiences, by hardship, by, situations, and they fall back in. For instance, people that are abused, they could repeat the cycle, they could stay stuck in that. And I feel like your story is so beautiful and interesting because I think that you saw what happened. You're very smart, obviously, a bright kid. And I think you took every experience that happened to you when you were young and used that as fucking rocket fuel to be like, I'm going to be successful. When you talk about it in the beginning where you're like, I wanted to be successful, it wasn't about material possessions. For you, it's like, you were like, inevitably, I'm going to be successful because I saw what it could look like to not. And that's what I want to create for myself. And that's what I want to give to my mom. I think that's so beautiful to meet somebody and see the work that you're putting in to literally create your dream reality. That's what you're doing. This wasn't handed to you. You networked yourself, you met the people, you showed up in the spaces, you did the thing, you built it. And I think a lot of people, again, looking at the finished product, right, where they're seeing the finished product, a lot of people have resentment towards people that find success, just assuming that they are successful because of XYZ. And they want to give all these reasons why it was so easy for you and why it's so hard for them. And I think that it's really, really, really important for people to recognize and understand that not everybody is handed success, and you have no idea what people had to go through and how hard they had to work and things that they had to overcome and what they physically had to do in order to get to the places that they are now. And you're just a really great example of that.
I appreciate that. I always joke, I'm like, shit, I wish that was me. I wish I had the road paved. I wish I didn't have to work and I could just do whatever. Like, that'd be fun. I think for me, it is just more so, okay, what do I want? And then obviously from the situation I was born into and going through that, it was like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to be treated any different. Even people here in New York, when they know the story, they're like, you're a miracle baby. You beat the odds. That annoys me. Yes, I understand that statistics are statistics and numbers are numbers, but I don't want to think about that. At the end of the day, I'm just a normal person just like you.
Yeah. With your whole experience of what you've done of stepping into this and creating this reality, what would you say if somebody's out there and they're like, I have this big dream and I want to work towards it. Do you have any first step advice that you might give someone in that position?
I would say whatever that thing is, try to get as close as possible to it. Try to get as
Yeah.
close as possible to it. Also, don't judge people. Don't judge people for who they are, where they come from, whatever. When I got here to New York and there were people that Ryan has brought in for us to talk to us or we're on Zooms with that I was like, oh my God, I was on a Zoom today with this person. They said this, 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 and this. And then friends back home are like, yeah, but that person's a loser. Or I saw their Instagram, they're full of shit. And it's like, you don't know. You have zero clue. So I think the biggest thing
Yeah.
is leave your ego at the door, be open to relationships and how people can help you, and then try to get as close as possible to that thing to see if that's what you really want or if it's just an idea.
Oh, I love that.
Because a buddy of ours played football at Ohio State and he told us what his schedule was and he never played. Never played. He was like third or fourth string. And I was like, yo, if I'm at Ohio State and I'm doing that and I'm not even playing, nope. I'm partying, I'm being a normal college student. So I think that you also have to know within yourself, is this what you really want, or do you want it because of the idea that it's going to give you?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be on Broadway. That was my dream when I was young. And so I did exactly what you're saying. I did not apply to a single Florida school. I was determined to only go to an out of state school. I knew that I wanted to audition for an acting program. That was a non negotiable. I did that. I got that. Then my first internship out of school, I was like, I only want to be working with the best. And I got this job at this incredible talent agency, but being so close to it and seeing truly what the life of a New York City actor looked like,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't for me. Because the reality of it is you could be on Broadway and that's incredible and amazing, but first of all, it's a gig, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not like you're on Broadway, then you're on Broadway forever. It's for however long that duration of that show is. And then the reality behind it is, waking up at 6 a.m., going to open calls, having 3 different jobs, running around from audition to audition, living in Harlem, having 6 roommates. I have tons of friends that went that path and they were happy to do it. And it was amazing and they loved it. And I watched it and I was like, that's not what I want. I want something different. And so I pivoted. And I think that's a big piece too, is like allowing yourself to pivot, because I think so many people have a dream and start taking action towards that dream, recognize somewhere along the line that that dream is no longer it, but then they feel like either A, to your point earlier, they have something to prove. And so they
Mm-hmm.
just continue on that path because they're like, well, I said it, so I have to do it.
Exactly.
And or they feel like stuck. I just put 10 years into entertainment and I left and I don't know if I'm going back to it. And for me, pivoting into doing what I'm doing now and being a creator and having a podcast and working in sales and being a nomad and I really had to reevaluate, what am I trying to do in my life? And what's important to me right now is the prestige of working in entertainment my whole identity. And it was for
Mm-hmm.
a really long time. And I think, if you're the guy that's always been pursuing real estate, then you wake up one day and decide, I don't want to do that anymore. You're like, but then who am I? Not even to other people. Who am I to myself if I'm not the guy pursuing real estate, right?
A lot of athletes have that problem where this is their entire life. It's over. And it's like, well, what do I do now? Like nothing is concrete. Everything is temporary. Everything we do is temporary. Also being open to the idea that it's not going to be what you expect it to be. And if it's not, then that's okay. I think a lot of people's egos are wrapped up in things, right? Let's say this podcast, for example, you do 1,000 more episodes, but you're like, I'm still not on Apple's top 10 podcast. There's people that are like, that's bullshit, and then they quit. Or there's other people that are like, but I don't care, I still love doing it. Not everyone is LeBron James, but there is a lot of pressure that comes with being LeBron James. And it's kind of like, do you want that on your shoulders constantly? And some people do, some people don't. Like when I got to college, I was like, I don't like this like I thought I did. But I didn't know until I
Yeah.
actually experienced it. And I don't think you can do that. That's why I say get it as close as possible that you can.
Well, I think to your point as well, where you're talking about like that, there's this duality between persistence and surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like showing up to the highest of your ability, putting yourself in the rooms, putting yourself in the position, doing all the things, and letting go of the outcome. It's a hard thing for people to grapple with because it's two completely opposing pieces of advice, but you also simultaneously need to understand how to show up in both of those ways of like, I'm giving this everything I got and I don't give a shit at all. Like,
Yeah.
there's both. Like, I care intensely and so deeply, and I don't care at all. Like, this doesn't define who I am. I know who I am regardless of this. For me, it's like the inevitability element of success to me is malleable because I have a vision of what I'm desiring, but I'm also open to what that actually looks like, right? Like, I have a certain level and a certain standard of what I'm seeking. And I don't have a direct, like, it has to happen like this, and this is where I need to land, and this is where I need to ride. I have this general loose idea of like, okay, I want to find success in business. I want to be influential. I want to help as many people as I can, this, that. But I'm like, but what that ultimately ends up looking like, I'm open to the versions of it that unfold as they unfold.
Yeah. And you just said something there. You were just like, I wanted to be influential. I think like even breaking down what that means, going back to, again, Nipsey, because he's another person that's had a major influence on me.
Who is he?
Nipsey Hussle. He's a rapper.
Okay.
From LA.
I'm like with you, it's either going to be rap or
Or
sports.
athletes.
And
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm just like smiling and nodding to
Yeah,
all
I
your
know. I could
references,
tell.
and I'm like, I don't know who these people are.
I know. People that are probably like, that are always tuned into your show are like, okay, where did she find this guy? Was he on the side of the road with a sign saying, I'll do an episode? And you're like, come on.
No, but I love hearing different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I love one of my favorite things too, especially because I'm down the spiritual path. I'm in the plant medicine world. I'm in all these spaces.
Yeah.
I really love meeting people that have arrived at a very similar place to where I'm at in terms of mindset and the way that they see the world, but we've come from completely different angles. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, you're starting to see that a lot more with a lot of famous or influential people being like, yeah, I do smoke weed. I do mushrooms. I do these spiritual trips to learn more about myself. Something that I think about all the time is Nipsey said that the highest human act is to inspire. And I thought about that for a hot second, and I was just like, okay, why do we, this was like back during COVID, because I was in Denver and I still remember exactly what I was doing, exactly what was going on the day that Kobe passed away in the helicopter. When I remember I was leaving Denver Biscuit Co., which you ever go to Denver, gotta go. We were sitting at a stop sign, we're leaving, we're about to go back to our apartment before we go to a Nuggets game. And I'm looking at my phone on Instagram and it says Kobe Bryant died, and it was through TMZ. And I texted my uncle and I said, yo, I think Kobe died, because I kept refreshing and more news outlets kept posting it and posting it. And my uncle was like, you got to stop smoking weed. And I'm like, because it was just like, it's Kobe. Like, there's no way he died and then he died in a helicopter crash like the way that they were describing it. And then later it came to light, and we were at the Denver Nuggets game that day, and all the players are crying. The whole arena is crying. And then you obviously see the major influence he's had on not just athletes, but just people in general. There's tons of people that I know who are just like, I don't know anything about basketball, but I know Kobe Bryant. And so I look at it from the aspect of, I think there's genuinely an element there that people love and revere him, not because of the athlete he was, but because something he did sparked something in them that inspired them and made them want to just go out there and be relentless, or at least give it a try. And where you said, I want to influence, even breaking that part down of why though, what is it to you? Not what are you going to give for it versus what are you going to get from it? And I think that helps with a lot of perspective in whatever you're trying to do or whatever journey you're on.
Yeah. Well, what's the purpose of any of it, right? Why are we pursuing any of the things we're running to do? It's all about intentionality, right? Like the intention of this podcast, the reason why I wanted to have people on, the reason why I wanted to share these stories is because these are the types of conversations that I wish I had access to before I met the people that I could have these types of conversations with, right? Like the way that I think, I meet so many people, like, dude, I mean, I've been traveling for the last 15 months and I talk to a lot of people because I love to talk to people. And there's so many people that I talk to that leave a conversation with me with their jaw on the ground. They're like, I've never had a conversation like this. They're like, the way that you see the world, the way that you think about things, they're like, you made me think so much about this. They're just blown away. And for me, I'm like, this is just a Tuesday night. You know what I mean? I have conversations like this every single day, all the time, because this is who I've now surrounded myself with. But I have to remember that there was a time in my life before when I didn't have anyone to talk to about any of these topics and I didn't know anything. I got reached out to in my DMs today. This guy reached out. He was listening to the podcast. I talk a lot about plant medicine. And he was like, do you have any recommendations of where you learn this stuff? Like from like podcasts and literature. And I was like, I've read some books and I've listened to some podcasts, but honestly, most of what I've learned and what I know is from conversations with people and real life experience. I've done a lot of work with plant medicine, but I didn't read it in a book. I didn't learn about it from a podcast. I went out there and sought the wisdom keepers and spoke to them and had conversations with them and met people that had experience with them and talked to them and went to workshops. And I was like, okay, I can put some things here for you together. But I think that's a piece of advice that I've heard going around a lot too, where so many people that are like trying to develop themselves, they get stuck in the loop of constant information, right? Where they're listening to podcasts, they're reading the books, and then years and years go by and nothing changes. And it's because they're not actually out there taking that advice and integrating it into their world and actually showing up differently. And I think to the point of kind of wrapping up everything that we've been talking about, I'm like, that I feel like is the key. You can understand all these concepts, you can know all these things. You could have gone down that whole rabbit hole, learned all of this amazing information, freaking like been in like the crime scene room with the red tape, like, oh, he said that and she said that. And you see all these similarities because it's a universal truth at this point, right? If 20 people, 20, 30, 40, 50, like all of these people that you look up to, they're all saying the same thing over and over and over again. Like there is some truth to that. But you very easily could have heard all that, understood it, processed it, and been like, cool, man. But you were like, all right, how do I fucking apply that to my life? How do I take all this beautiful information I've received, soak it up into my body, and then take my dream, take that advice and do it? So that's my intention with the influential thing, and that's my intention with this podcast is I want people to hear these stories, to piece together these truths, to integrate it, and then to, even if it's one thing, even if you go out tomorrow and you have a conversation with someone that you were afraid to talk to, or you reach out to someone that you want to have an informational session with that's doing something that you'd want to do, like whatever the fuck it is, but just like that inspiration to take a step that's going to make your life better.
Yeah. 1,000%.
I appreciate you so much. I love your story. I'm still so fucking inspired by it. I hope that everybody listening feels the same. I'm sure they do. Thank you for saying yes to this and sharing your wisdom.
Of course.
Yeah,
I was a
this
little
is so
hesitant
fun.
because I've only been on one podcast before and it was audio only. And something I will share is like being on camera petrifies me. I don't know why. Like
Right.
it just is like
Perfect.
the biggest, but it's something I have to get over. So I'm like
It's an
baby
edge.
steps. Yeah, I'm like baby steps.
I keep saying that's one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning right now too. When the edge presents itself, I check in first and I say, is this not in alignment or am I just scared? Right. And if the answer is I'm just scared, then I go, okay, well, then I have to do it. How do you feel now that you've done it?
It's like, oh, that wasn't as bad. It was worse in my mind than it actually was.
Well, you did a really good job. I didn't even know that you had any reservations around it. So I'm very grateful that you took the chance and you said yes and you showed up. And this is a really fun combo.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks so much.